There are moments in life when words fail us. When someone walks away and you're left sitting in the silence wondering, was any of it real? Maybe you're in one of those moments right now. You wake up still reaching for a voice that's no longer there. You scroll through old conversations hoping to find a clue, a reason, an answer. But the silence says nothing. It's in these moments that the world feels both too fast and completely still. Like everything is moving forward except you. If that's where you are right now, take a breath. You've found a place where that ache is seen, not dismissed, not shamed, but gently named and slowly transformed. This isn't another video that tells you to move on or just be strong. You don't need more noise. You need wisdom, stoic wisdom. Because what if I told you that letting go of someone isn't the end of love? It's the beginning of returning to yourself. You see, the ancient Stoics didn't run from emotional pain. They met it quietly, clearly, and without flinching. They didn't try to control what was beyond them. They focused on what they could shape: their breath, their response, their character, and most importantly, their peace. In this video, we're not going to numb the pain. We're going to understand it. We're going to honor it. And step by step, we're going to rise through it. You'll hear 7 timeless rules, not cold philosophies, but living truths. Each one crafted to help you detach with grace, to stop bleeding over someone who no longer chooses you, and to come home gently and powerfully to the one person who has never left your side. So if you've ever loved someone who let go without explanation, stayed in something long after it stopped seeing you, or felt like your worth disappeared when they did, then this video is for you. And I promise, if you stay with me, through these 7 Stoic lessons, you'll not only understand why it hurts, you'll learn how to stop giving that hurt the power to define you. Because you are not what you lost. You are what you choose to become after losing. This isn't about forgetting them. It's about remembering you. So take a breath, set down the weight, and let's begin this quiet, powerful return to yourself. Rule 1. Focus only on what you can control. You know, one of the hardest pills to swallow in this life is realizing you don't get to control how people treat you. You don't get to decide if someone stays or goes. You don't get to write their feelings or edit their decisions, no matter how kind you've been, no matter how much you love them. And that realization, it can feel like a quiet kind of heartbreak. We spend so much time, so much energy trying to pull invisible strings, trying to convince someone to stay, trying to be enough, say the right thing, fix what we think we broke. But the truth is, no matter how hard you try, you will never have power over another person's will. And you weren't meant to. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic minds, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not just philosophy. That's survival. When a relationship starts to slip through your fingers, it's natural to want to tighten your grip. But the tighter you hold, the more pain you create, not just for them, but for yourself. You start asking the wrong questions. What did I do wrong? How do I make them love me again? What if I just try harder? But none of those questions lead to peace. They lead you to war with yourself. You see, the Stoics understood something that most of us learn the hard way. Control is limited, but freedom lives inside that limit. Let me ask you something. Have you ever lost sleep over someone else's silence? Sat there, staring at your phone, hoping they'd just say something, anything. And the silence, It feels louder than words ever could. That kind of waiting, that emotional holding pattern, it drains your soul. And yet here's the paradox. Even when someone ghosts you, walks away, rejects you, you still have power. It's just not the kind of power you wish you had. You don't control their behavior, but you do control your breath. You do control how you respond. You do control whether you chase or choose to stand still. There's a kind of dignity in choosing not to fight for what's already walked away. I'm not saying that detaching is easy. I'm saying it's necessary. When we suffer deeply, it's often not because of what happened. It's because we keep replaying the moment, over and over again in our heads, trying to rewrite it. If only I had said this. If only I hadn't done that. If only they understood. But you know what's underneath those if-only thoughts. Control, desire for control, the illusion that somehow you could have engineered a different outcome. But life doesn't work like that. The Stoics called this the discipline of acceptance. It doesn't mean you agree with the pain. It means you don't resist what already is. You can't edit the past. You can only choose how to meet the present. And that right there, that's where your real strength begins. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're standing on a beach. A wave is coming. You can try to stop the wave. You can scream at it, plead with it, beg it to change course. But the wave will come anyway. It's nature. Your power is not in stopping the wave. Your power is in how you receive it. Will you stand rigid and let it knock you down? Or will you bend, breathe, and learn to ride it? That's what Stoicism is. It's learning to ride the emotional waves of life without becoming them. So if someone you love has pulled away, if they're no longer showing up the way they used to, don't drown trying to swim after them. Anchor yourself. Come back to center. Because here's the truth. The person you most need to be loyal to is you. Your peace, your self-respect, your inner stillness. Those are the things you can control. Those are the things worth protecting. I've seen people lose themselves chasing someone else's affection. They become fragments of who they once were, trying to shrink themselves to fit someone's fading attention. But that's not love. That's fear in disguise. You don't need to chase what's already gone. You need to return to what's always been within you. Your breath, your calm, your clarity. So what do you do when someone pulls away? You stop pulling forward. You sit. You breathe. You feel the ache without dramatizing it. You remind yourself, this is pain, but it's not permanent. This is loss, but I am not lost. You are not the absence of someone's love. You are the presence of your own strength, and that strength grows every time you choose acceptance over control. Let them go if they need to go. You're not responsible for their journey. You're responsible for your response. That's where power lives. So the next time you find yourself spiraling, asking why they left, why they changed, why they didn't choose you, pause, place a hand over your heart, and ask a better question. What do I still have control over right now? That question is your lifeline, because no matter what happens around you, no matter who leaves, who stays, or who doesn't see your worth, you always get to choose how you carry yourself through it. You always have the choice to protect your peace over controlling someone else's presence. That's not detachment. That's emotional freedom. And that, my friend, is the first step to healing. Your peace begins the moment you stop giving your energy to what you cannot influence. Rule 2. Detachment is not coldness. It's inner clarity. Let me tell you something that takes most of us years, sometimes decades, to learn. Detachment is not the same thing as indifference. You can care deeply. You can love someone from the very center of your being and still choose to let them go. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. You see, most people confuse detachment with emotional numbness, as if letting go means you no longer feel, as if stepping back means your heart went cold. But the truth is far more powerful than that. To detach is not to stop loving. It's to stop needing that love to survive. It's to breathe without begging, to stand without clinging, to love someone and still walk away with dignity because your soul knows when something no longer serves your growth. That's not indifference. That's clarity. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed too long in a connection that started to feel like erosion? Not because you didn't know it was time to go, but because the idea of letting go felt unbearable. That's where most of our suffering comes from. Not the loss itself, but our refusal to let go of what's already gone. We become attached not just to people, but to stories, to outcomes, to how we thought things were supposed to unfold. And the moment those expectations begin to crack, we hold on tighter. Because we think holding on makes us loyal. We think letting go makes us cold. But listen to me carefully. Holding on to what no longer holds you is not loyalty. It's self-abandonment. And the Stoics knew this. They practiced something deeper than mere emotional regulation. They practiced inner alignment. That means living in a way that honors truth over fantasy, acceptance over illusion, clarity over emotional chaos. Seneca once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." That applies to love too. It's not the absence of someone's affection that leaves us empty. It's the craving for it, even when we know it's no longer being offered. And that's where detachment steps in, not as rejection, but as liberation. You see, when you love someone from a place of fear, fear of loss, fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten, you don't actually love them. You're using them as a shield against your own unhealed wounds. But when you love someone from a place of clarity, you don't cling, you don't chase, you simply allow them to be free. And if they choose to walk away, you let them not. Because you're emotionless, but because you know your worth doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's presence. That's detachment. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the absence of neediness. Let me share something personal. Years ago, I loved someone who outgrew me. I felt it before they said it. Their eyes softened. Their words became fewer. The warmth between us dimmed like a flame that had no more air. And still, I tried to hold on. I tried to revive something that was no longer alive. And I confused that struggle for love. But it wasn't love. It was fear dressed in devotion. And it nearly broke me. What healed me wasn't time. It wasn't even closure. It was the day I sat with myself and asked, why am I afraid to let go of someone who's already gone? And the answer came quietly, because you thought their love made you whole. That's when I understood. Detachment isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-recognition. It's when you finally realize your worth is not tied to who chooses you. Your value doesn't diminish when someone leaves, and your heart can remain open even if your hands are empty. You can love. You can grieve. You can remember their smile and still not call them back. That is strength. And that strength grows when you stop mistaking your emotional survival for their responsibility. They were never meant to carry your wholeness. That was always your job. The Stoics taught us to return to the self again and again whenever the external world shakes. Because peace is not found in clinging to others. It's found in the quiet space within you that remains unshaken even when everything else falls away. So if you find yourself wondering, does letting go make me heartless, and let me answer you with love. No, letting go makes you honest. Letting go makes you courageous. Letting go makes room for something new, for someone aligned, or maybe just for your own breath. And most importantly, letting go brings you back to you. You can love someone and still let them walk away. That is not weakness. That is clarity. And clarity, that's where healing begins. Rule 3. Remember they were only a chapter, not the book. You know, it's strange how when someone walks out of your life, it doesn't just feel like an ending. It can feel like the ending, as if everything that came before them was just the prelude. And now that they're gone, so is the meaning. I've sat across from people, grown, intelligent, kind-hearted people, who said things like, "I don't know who I am without them." Or, "My life had direction, and now it just feels empty." And I get it. When someone mattered that much, when they lived inside your plans, your laughter, your quiet moments, their absence doesn't just echo in the silence. It becomes the silence. But here's what I want you to hear from someone who's lived long enough to know better. They were only a chapter, not the book. I want you to imagine for a second that your life is a novel, thick, complex, full of twists and turns. Now think about your favorite book. It probably had a chapter that made you cry, or a moment that changed the course of the story. But did that one chapter define the entire book? Did the whole meaning rest on just that one part? No. The beauty of a story is in the way it unfolds page by page, and you, my friend, are still unfolding. But when we lose someone, especially someone we gave our heart to, we start to believe that the narrative has collapsed, that we're stuck at a comma that will never become a period, that the story has run out of meaning. But that's not true. The story isn't over. You're just in a painful paragraph. And yes, it's okay to grieve that paragraph. It's okay to reread it, cry over it, wonder if it should have gone differently. But don't stay there. Don't live your whole life on one page. You see, pain has this way of making us forget context. We zoom in so close to the wound, we forget the wider landscape. The years before they arrived. The dreams you had that didn't involve them. The parts of you they never even touched. Because you are more than who you were with them. You are more than who you lost. There is still ink in your pen. There are still blank pages ahead. The Stoics had a way of reminding themselves of this. They practiced what they called the view from above, a mental shift, where they imagined their life from a higher perspective. Not just their home or their body, but their entire existence seen from the stars. And from that view, every heartbreak, every lot and every mistake looks smaller. Not meaningless, just smaller. From that view, we stop asking, why did this happen to me? And we start asking, what can I become because of this? Let me tell you something I've learned in my 60 years on this earth. Loss doesn't just take things from you. Sometimes, it reveals you to yourself, because when a chapter closes, you're faced with a question. Who am I now? Who was I with them? Not, who did they want me to be? But, who am I independent of what I lost? And that's where healing begins. Not when you replace the person. Not when you understand the ending. But when you realize that you are the author. You hold the pen. No one else. Not the person who left. Not the one who broke your heart. Not the one who promised forever and gave you a few pages instead. You decide what comes next. Maybe the next chapter is about rediscovery. Maybe it's about solitude. Maybe it's about building something you forgot you wanted. But whatever it is, let it be yours. Write it with courage. Write it with truth. Write it without needing their approval. Sometimes we think closure is about getting answers, but real closure is turning the page without them. It's saying I may never understand why it ended, but I still get to continue. And if you need a place to start small. Wake up and make your bed like someone who deserves a peaceful space. Walk outside and feel the breeze like someone who still belongs in the world. Write a line in a journal like someone whose story matters, because it does. And when the memories sneak in, because they will, don't fight them. Acknowledge them. Smile at them. Then come back to the present. Because this moment, right here, this is a new sentence, a new page, a new chance. You are not what you lost. You are what you choose to become after losing. So don't give the closing of one chapter the power to define your entire life. Turn the page with grace. Keep writing. They were only a chapter, not the book, and you're just getting to the good part. Rule 4. Impermanence is a teacher, not a thief. Let me say something to you plainly. Everything you love will change. Everyone you know will leave or be left, not because life is cruel, but because life is moving. Nothing stays still. Not your body, not your relationships, not even the thoughts you're having right now. But here's the problem. We don't suffer because things change. We suffer because we expected them not to. We imagined forever. We whispered promises. We stared at someone and said, always. And in that moment, we meant it. But life doesn't speak that language. Life speaks in seasons, in shifting winds, in beginnings, yes, but also in endings. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself in his meditations all is ephemeral fame, and the famous as well. And if even fame is fleeting, if even emperors vanish, what makes us believe that our love, as beautiful as it might feel, will last forever? Now don't get me wrong. This isn't about being cynical. It's about being awake. You see, impermanence is not an enemy. It's a teacher. But most of us don't treat it that way. We treat change like a thief, like something that rips away what we worked so hard to build. The relationship, the family, the version of ourselves we were proud of. And when those things fade, we panic, we grieve, we try to rewind the clock. But let me tell you, you can't love and avoid change. You can't live and avoid loss. That's the contract you signed the day you were born. So the real question isn't, why did this end? It's how do I meet this ending with grace? Imagine for a moment that you're sitting on a beach watching a wave rise. It builds slowly, pulling itself up with power and elegance. For a moment it feels infinite. You marvel at it. But then it crashes. Of course it crashes. And if you weren't prepared for that, it might feel violent. But if you understand the nature of waves, you don't grieve the crash. You celebrate the rise. That wave wasn't meant to stay. It was meant to move to crest, to fall, and return to the sea. And so was that person. So was that season of your life. So was that version of love you once held. Don't mourn the wave for crashing. Be grateful you saw it rise. The Stoics practiced a concept called memento mori. Remember you must die. It wasn't morbid. It was meant to sharpen their awareness, to wake them up to the beauty of impermanence. Because when you remember that nothing lasts, you love deeper. You say things you would have held back. You appreciate moments that otherwise slip through your fingers unnoticed. I've lost people I never thought I would. Friends, lovers, even versions of myself I didn't know I'd outgrow. Some said goodbye gently. Others left with silence. And each time I thought, this is too much. But it never was. Because what life takes away with one hand, it teaches with the other. I learned that holding on doesn't keep something alive. It only keeps you stuck. It keeps you staring at the ashes, hoping they'll turn back into fire. But ashes don't burn. They whisper. And if you're quiet enough, you'll hear what they're trying to say. This had its time, and its time has passed. You're not here to make moments last forever. You're here to live them fully, then let them go with honor. That's what it means to walk the Stoic path, not to detach from love, but to stop expecting love, to freeze in time. Let me offer you something you can practice the next time you feel that wave of grief. When a memory pulls at your heart, don't push it away. Welcome it. Sit with it. Say, thank you for coming. I remember you. Then let it go. Because emotions, like everything else, are temporary visitors. They're not asking you to rebuild the past. They're asking you to recognize it and move forward lighter. You are not your losses. You are the space those losses leave behind, the space where something new can now be born. And if that thought makes you feel lonely, I understand. But loneliness is just the echo of what once filled the room. It's not your future. It's the sound of space clearing. You are being cleared for what's next, for a softer chapter, for a deeper version of yourself, for a kind of peace that doesn't depend on permanence. Because the truth is, nothing we cling to lasts. Not youth, not love, not even the identities we wear. But what does last if we let it is character, dignity, self-respect, and the ability to walk through endings with our eyes wide open. So if you're grieving right now, if you're still wondering why something had to change or end or fall apart, take a breath. You didn't fail. You didn't break the story. You just reached the part where the chapter ends. Let it close, turn the page, and walk on. Forever was never promised, not to you, not to me, not to the stars. Don't mourn the wave for crashing. Be grateful you saw it rise. Rule 5. Negative visualization. Trains the heart for reality. Let me begin with a strange truth. Sometimes the most powerful form of peace is to imagine its absence. Now I know how that sounds. Why would anyone willingly picture losing something or someone they love? Why visualize an empty room, a final goodbye, or a moment when the phone no longer rings? Because the Stoics believed in something most of the world still resists. You don't prepare for life by wishing only for the good. You prepare by accepting that everything good is also fleeting. And that's where this practice comes in. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of loss. It means this: you mentally walk through the possible difficulties before they arrive, not to cause more pain, but to soften the blow when pain inevitably comes. That's not pessimism. That's wisdom. Because sooner or later, everything you love will change form. The people you count on will leave or die. Your body will age. The laughter around your table will become an echo. And when that happens, it hurts less if you've already made room for the ache. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine waking up tomorrow and your partner is gone. Not gone in anger, not gone because of betrayal. Just gone. A car accident, a diagnosis, a quiet goodbye you never saw coming. Now I know that thought stings, but that's exactly the point. The Stoics didn't avoid this kind of thought. They embraced it. Because when you imagine loss not obsessively, but intentionally, you begin to cherish more deeply. You look at the person next to you and say, "This moment won't last." And suddenly, you listen a little more. You hold them a little closer. You forgive a little faster. You're not pretending they'll never leave. You're loving them because they might. That's not cold. That's sacred. You see, when we avoid the possibility of loss, we begin to live in a fantasy. We convince ourselves that nothing will change, that the people we love will always be within reach, that time is generous. But time is not. Time is fair, and fairness means it moves forward whether we're ready or not. So if you fear losing someone or something, start releasing them now in your thoughts. Not to detach in cruelty, but to prepare in love. Because when you've already let go in your imagination, you're less likely to crumble in reality. I've practiced this myself. I've imagined the phone call I never want to receive. I've pictured the hospital room, the quiet after the funeral. And no, it didn't make me cold. It made me grateful. I started saying I love you more often. I stopped assuming there would always be a next time. And I held people not with fear, but with full presence. That's the gift of negative visualization. It doesn't make you love less, it makes you love more wisely. Now, some people resist this idea because they think it's inviting tragedy. But that's superstition. The Stoics didn't believe in tempting fate. They believed in preparing for it. Let me ask you this. Would you rather live in denial and be shattered by reality? Or would you rather accept reality's terms and meet it with strength? Because the truth is, imagining loss doesn't cause loss. But not imagining it causes more pain when it comes. And it will come. This isn't about becoming a monk or living with constant fear. It's about building emotional muscles, so that when the storm arrives, you're not thrown into chaos. You know what to expect. You've felt it before in the safety of your own mind. You've already grieved the moment. So when it becomes real, you're not shocked. You're steady. Let me give you a phrase I use often in my own mind. This could be the last time. When I hug a friend, when I speak to my child, when I watch the sunset from my porch. This could be the last time. And instead of fearing that thought, I use it. I use it to sharpen my awareness, to slow down, to breathe in what's right here, right now. Because if this were the last time, wouldn't you want to be fully present for it? Wouldn't you want your heart to be open, not distracted? Wouldn't you want to leave nothing unsaid? That's what this practice does. It brings you back to the fragile miracle of this moment. And in doing that, it actually lessens your fear. Because fear thrives in denial. But fear dissolves in preparation. So if there's someone you love deeply and you're terrified of losing them, don't avoid that thought. Sit with it. Say to yourself, what if they're gone tomorrow? Let the tears come. Let your body feel it. Then, when the tears dry, go. Love them with a full and fearless heart. Because now you're not loving from assumption. You're loving from awareness. And that kind of love, that's the kind that transforms you. So no, this isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming ready. What you fear losing the most, learn to release it in thought, and you'll suffer less in life. That's not darkness. That's discipline. That's clarity. That's the quiet strength of a soul prepared to meet whatever life brings without collapsing. You don't need certainty. You need presence. You don't need promises. You need perspective. And you don't need forever. You need this moment held fully in both hands and honored while it's here. That is the Stoic way. That is how you suffer less, not by avoiding pain, but by meeting it with open eyes and a steady heart. Rule 6. Pain is a mirror. Use it to meet yourself. There's a moment that comes after heartbreak, after the goodbye, after the silence settles in, and it's quieter than grief, but just as heavy. It's the moment when you realize they're not coming back, and your first instinct might be to stare at the door they walked out of, to replay the words they said, to scroll through old messages, to revisit the last hug and wonder if they already knew it was the last. But I'm going to ask you to do something different, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Don't just stare at the space they left. Look inward. Because when someone walks away from your life, they don't just leave behind silence, they leave behind a mirror. And if you're brave enough to look into it, you'll see something deeper than the loss. You'll see yourself. You see, most of us aren't just mourning the person. We're mourning the version of ourselves that was tethered to them. The comfort, the validation, the way their presence helped us avoid certain questions we weren't ready to face. So let me ask you, what part of you was anchored to their presence? Was it the part that felt seen when they listened? The part that felt lovable when they smiled at you? Or maybe it was the part of you that finally felt safe from your own insecurities. Because that's what love often does, doesn't it? It puts a warm hand over the wound. It doesn't always heal it, but it covers it. It quiets it. It lets you forget. It exists for a little while, until they're gone. And then suddenly the wound is exposed again. The cold air hits it, and you feel pain, not just because they're gone, but because their love was hiding something you hadn't yet healed. That's why this hurts so deeply. Not just because they left, but because now you're left with yourself, and you're not sure that's enough. But here's the truth. The hard, liberating truth. This pain is not punishment. It's an invitation. It's life asking you to stop reaching outward for wholeness, to stop making someone else the mirror that tells you who you are, to finally turn inward, sit in the quiet, and meet the person you've been avoiding. Now I know that sounds daunting. When you've wrapped so much of your identity in someone else's arms, being alone can feel like being lost. But solitude isn't abandonment. It's the ground where self-awareness is planted. The Stoics believed that every challenge, especially emotional pain, was a tool, not to be feared, but to be used. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." In other words, pain isn't the enemy. It's the signal, the mirror. And the question is, will you use it to meet yourself, or will you keep staring at the absence of someone else? Because what you choose to do with that space they left will shape what you become. Some people fill that space with distraction. They rebound. They drink. They scroll endlessly. They chase anything to avoid the ache. But others, few but wise, they sit with it. They light a candle. They let the ache speak. And slowly, something incredible happens. They begin to hear their own voice again. The one that got quiet when love got loud. That voice says you've been missing from your own life, You mind parts of yourself just to be held. You let someone's attention define your worth. And it doesn't say this to shame you. It says this to wake you up. Because now, there's room. The space is clear. And in that space, you get to ask the real questions. Who am I when I'm not performing for someone else's love? What do I need that I've been outsourcing to other people? What have I ignored in myself? Because it was easier to be needed than to be known. These are not easy questions. They're not romantic or poetic. They are raw, uncomfortable, but they are the doorway to freedom. You see, emotional pain is not just about grief. It's about excavation. It digs beneath the surface. It brings buried truths to light. And most of the time, what you'll find isn't shameful. It's simply unmet needs. A longing to feel worthy. A desire to feel chosen. A hunger for safety. But now, without them, you get to stop outsourcing those things. You get to build them within. That's what true detachment is. Not shutting down. Not pretending you don't care. But saying, I will feel this fully, and I will use it to become more whole. This is the Stoic path. Not a cold, emotionless existence, but a clear, conscious one. A life where you don't resist what hurts, you receive it as a teacher. Pain strips away illusions. It shows you what you leaned on too much. It shows you where you gave too little to yourself. And yes, it hurts. But pain is not a life sentence. It's a mirror, and when you face it, when you look into it without flinching, you begin to see someone emerging from the fog. Someone wiser. Someone stronger. Someone no longer afraid to be seen by you. Because in the end, this rule isn't just about heartbreak. It's about identity. It's about coming home to the self that got lost in the noise of someone else's love. Every ending clears a space. Fill it with self-awareness, not self-pity. Don't ask why they left. Ask why you handed them the keys to your self-worth in the first place. Don't wait for their return. Return to you. Return to the parts of you that existed before they entered the room. Return to the passions, the dreams, the softness, the solitude. Return to the stillness. And in that stillness, rebuild. Not to prove anything. Not to become better so someone else will come back. But because you were never meant to be incomplete. They didn't complete you. They reminded you of what wholeness could feel like. But now you get to create that wholeness yourself. So my friend, the next time pain shows up, don't reach for the nearest escape. Don't rush to fill the silence. Instead, meet your reflection. Feel the ache. Then ask, what is this pain trying to show me? About me, and then listen. Because in that answer, you may just find the person you've been looking for all along. Rule 7. Stillness heals more than closure. Let me ask you something you may never have said out loud. Have you ever found yourself waiting, not for someone to come back, but just for them to explain why they left? We chase closure like it's oxygen. We believe that if we just had that one final conversation, that one honest moment, we'd finally be free. It's a seductive idea. That the wound would close, that we'd walk away whole, if only we had the answers. But here's the hard truth. I've learned not through books, but through life. Closure is often a story we never get to read, and the longer we wait for it, the more we bleed. You see, we think closure is clarity, but sometimes it's just control in disguise. We want an explanation not because it will change the outcome, but because we can't bear the silence. We want something to fill that space where love used to live, even if it's pain, even if it's words that won't make it better. But not all wounds are stitched by words. Some are only healed by time and stillness. I used to think closure came from answers. Now I know it comes from acceptance. Let me tell you what stillness taught me. After someone I deeply loved left with no warning, I waited for months for a message. Anything. A reason. Something to hold in my hands and say, "Okay, now I understand. Now I can breathe." But nothing came. I replayed every conversation. I examined every choice I'd made. I picked apart my words, my silences, my hopes. And every day I did that, I bled just a little more. Then, one morning, I remember it clearly. I stopped asking why. I just sat. No music, no texts, no reaching. Just me, a breath, and the sound of the world moving on without me. And in that stillness, something cracked open. Not my pain, my awareness. I realized that the ache wasn't about them leaving. It was about me not letting go. I was holding on to the idea that I was owed something, that they were supposed to return and explain themselves, that healing was a debt they had to pay. But they weren't coming back. Not with answers, not with apologies, not even with honesty. And that's when I understood. Some questions don't need answers. They need distance. Stillness doesn't explain what happened. It simply helps you stop bleeding. Because when the world feels like it's spinning out of control, when your emotions are loud and chaotic, and begging for resolution, what you really need is to sit still. Not forever, but long enough to stop reaching. Long enough to breathe again. Long enough to let your nervous system remember that you're not in danger, that you're not waiting anymore. The Stoics believed that inner peace doesn't come from controlling the outer world, but from mastering the inner one. And sometimes the most radical mastery is sitting with discomfort without needing to solve it. Because closure isn't always a conversation. It's not a perfect goodbye. It's not someone explaining why they hurt you. Sometimes, closure is just a deep inhale, followed by the choice to stop asking. It's deciding I may never know why, but I refuse to suffer while waiting to find out. You see, the person who left may never give you what you want. They might not even understand what they did. Or they might understand perfectly and still choose silence. But your healing isn't their responsibility. It never was. Healing begins the moment you stop chasing something that no longer belongs to you. And the way to stop chasing is to get still. I want to be clear. Stillness is not passivity. It's not giving up. It's not weakness. It's an act of sacred rebellion in a world obsessed with movement. Stillness says, I will not chase closure that only reopens wounds. I will not beg for peace from the person who broke it. I will not place my healing in the hands of someone who has already let go. Stillness is where your self-respect grows roots. It's where your spirit learns to breathe without external permission. It's where your clarity sharpens, not because the situation is solved, but because you no longer need it to be. And from that place, you stop being defined by what happened. You become defined by how you rise in the absence of what you wanted. Now you might ask, but isn't it natural to want answers? Yes, it is. You're not broken for wanting closure. You're human. But don't confuse desire with necessity. Wanting closure is natural. Needing it to heal is optional. You can move on without a period at the end of the sentence. You can walk away even when the book is left unfinished. Because sometimes what you thought was the final chapter was just the part where you begin to write again. This time alone. The world will keep spinning. The city will buzz. People will fall in love again. And you just need to sit. You just need to close your eyes. Place one hand on your chest and whisper to yourself, "It's okay. I don't need to know. I just need to let go." There's a peace that only comes when you stop knocking on the door of someone who's already left the room. There's a strength that blooms when you finally sit with the discomfort long enough for it to soften. That's the moment you begin to come home to yourself. That's the moment you stop bleeding. So if you're waiting for that message, if you're hoping for that explanation, if you've been refreshing their page just to feel less alone, pause, sit, breathe. Let it pass through you like a wave. No answers, no closure, just breath, just silence, just you. And in that silence, you'll hear the one thing you were always meant to hear. Your own voice again. And it will say, "You don't need closure. You need freedom." And that freedom begins here. Not in their words, not in their guilt, not in what could have been said differently. Right here, in this stillness, in this moment. That is enough. Stillness doesn't explain what happened. It just helps you stop bleeding. Some questions don't need answers. They need distance. Let the world keep spinning. You just sit, breathe. Let it pass through. You're going to be okay. And more than that, you're going to be whole. Detachment isn't the end of love. It's the return to self. There comes a moment, not with a bang, not with drama, but with quiet, when you finally stop holding your breath for someone else's return. You stop checking your phone. You stop explaining yourself to ghosts. You stop trying to make sense of silence. And instead, you come back to yourself. That's not a punishment. It's grace. Not grace for them. Not some noble act of forgiveness, but grace for you. Because you've spent enough time trying to be chosen by someone who already let go. You've twisted your identity into a shape that fit inside their absence. You've carried pain like it was proof that the love was real. But now, you don't need that pain anymore. You don't need closure. You don't need understanding. You just need the courage to release what never truly belonged to you. The Stoics taught us that suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our refusal to accept them, our refusal to let the chapter close. And so we stay. We stay in our minds. We stay in the old stories. We stay in conversations that never happened and apologies we never received. But none of that brings us peace. You know what does stillness? Acceptance. Detachment not as coldness, but as clarity. You are not meant to beg to be seen. You are meant to remember who you are. And who are you? You are not this loss. You are not the echo of their footsteps. You are not the tears on your pillow or the questions in your chest. You are the one who stayed. You are the one who felt everything and still stood back up. You are the one who chose peace when pain was louder. And that choice, that quiet choice to heal, is what makes you powerful. Detachment isn't the end of love. It's the end of illusion. It's the moment when you stop chasing a version of love that required you to abandon yourself. Because real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't ask you to prove. It doesn't vanish without warning and call it fate. Real love stays. And if it doesn't, it wasn't yours to hold. And yet that doesn't mean what you had wasn't real. Of course it was. It mattered. It shaped you. It carved beauty and ache into your memory. But now it's time to bless it and let it go. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently. It means telling the story without breaking every time you say their name. It means you get to smile again, not because the pain never existed, but because it no longer owns you. That's the gift of detachment. It's not about shutting down. It's about choosing to protect your peace. To stop reopening the same wound, expecting a different outcome. To say, I've bled enough for this. You see, when someone walks away, they don't just leave a hole. They leave a decision. A decision about who you'll be in the aftermath. Will you define yourself by what left, or will you rise? And rising doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean moving on overnight, or pretending it didn't hurt. It just means choosing yourself. Again and again. Until the weight in your chest lifts and the mirror in front of you reflects not who you were in that relationship, but who you are without it. And that version of you, they're not broken. They're not unlovable. They're not too much or too little or too late. They're becoming more honest, more grounded, more willing to sit with the hard truths and still show up with an open heart. So if you hear anything today, let it be this: you are not what left. You are what remains. You are the stillness. You are the breath. You are the chapter that begins after the last page is turned. This pain, it's not your identity. It's your turning point. And maybe that's the most sacred part of all this. Not the love, not the goodbye, but the return. The return to your own arms, to your own presence, to your own life, untethered, unchained, and ready for peace. So when you find yourself grieving again, as you will, don't shame the ache. Just place your hand gently on your heart and whisper, I release you. Not because it didn't matter, but because you do. That's what this was always about. Not letting go of them, but finding your way back to you. As we reach the end of this 7-part journey through the Stoic path of emotional detachment, I want to leave you with this truth: letting go is not the end of love. It is the beginning of clarity. Each rule we explored wasn't meant to harden your heart, but to open it gently, and with strength. Because detachment is not about walking away from emotion. It's about walking back toward yourself. Whether you're healing from heartbreak, reclaiming your identity, or simply searching for inner steadiness in a world that keeps shifting, remember, you are not alone. The Stoic outlook exists to guide you, to challenge you, and to remind you that your peace is never dependent on someone else's presence. If this video spoke to something in you, if it made you feel seen, or stronger, or simply still, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Stoic Outlook. Click like, share this video with someone who may need it, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what part resonated with you most, and what questions you'd like to explore in future videos. Together we'll go deeper into purpose, peace, resilience, and the quiet power of living well. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay grounded, stay present, and stay true.